Welcome to the BCAM podcast. We believe better coaching always matters. My name is Mike Massucci, author of Elite Journey Books. I'm joined by my co-host, Dan Young, the Executive Director of BCAM, Basketball Coaches Association of Michigan. On this podcast, we bring in the best and the brightest coaches to help share insights for the betterment of our game and improve the leadership in our profession. Our vision is that every basketball team across the state of Michigan has a great coach. Coach Young, our first podcast.
Yeah.
Before we begin, do you want to just share a little bit for our viewers and our guests on why another basketball podcast?
Yeah, it's such an honor to serve basketball coaches in our state. As the executive director, but I've been on the board since 2000. I've been coaching since, 1991. It's just so fun to be involved with this game and to be here with you guys today and to serve coaches. So, we are always trying to find new ways to serve one another to get better. When you say better coaching always matters, it's true. I mean, you can't fool the kids. The kids will know if you know what you're talking about and if you're getting better. And so that's what this is all about, is just another way to talk basketball, bring great coaches on. Mike, you were a great coach. We got Kevin Richards on, who's just a tremendous coach and our clinician leader for years and years. And it's going to be fun tonight.
Thanks, Coach. Well, we're going to have a theme every month, and our theme this month is being a lifelong learner. And I can't think of a better topic than the BCAM Clinic and a better guest than Coach Kevin Richards from Grosse Pointe South to help share that theme of being a lifelong learner. Coach Richards, welcome to our podcast.
Mike, Dan, thank you for having me. Mike, I'll be honest with you. I don't know if my name's ever been associated with best and brightest. I don't know if anyone's ever called me bright. So I'll take that I'm going to take that right and run with it.
You fit right in, man.
Yeah.
Well, I love it. Well, we're excited to have you, and we're excited to preview our clinic that's going to happen later this month. But before we dive into the clinic, Coach, you're at Grosse Pointe South. Can you tell our listeners about your coaching journey? How did you land at Grosse Pointe South?
Well, I had, actually, I'm going to go back to high school, and I had probably one, other than my dad, probably the most impactful person in my life came as my basketball coach my senior year, and it was Tom Velko. Tom Velko was a board member for many years, and he made I loved the game. Grew up, playing, my dad being in the gym all the time, but, Tom really had an impact on me and inspired me, to go into, education and go into, more specifically coaching basketball. So after I graduated from Marysville, I played basketball at St. Clair Community College for 2 years, and our assistant at the time got the head coaching job at Coleman High School, and up by Mount Pleasant, between Clare and Midland. And I decided to go to Central, and seemed like Central was the hot place for teachers, and
That's right.
Fire up chips, right? So I was his assistant at Coleman for a year, and then the next year, the girls were in the fall. I ended up getting the varsity girls job, and I was 21 years old, and I coached both varsity girls and JV boys at Coleman High School for 2 years. I came back. A good friend of mine from high school, someone that I looked up to as a player and had a lot of success at St. Clair High School playing, was Jay Seletsky, who is also a BCAM regional rep.
Director.
And Yeah, Jay asked me to come and just got the varsity job at Lance Cruz North and asked me to be his JV coach. And so I was his JV coach. And that following year, the varsity girls job opened up. And so I coached another season of JV boys basketball with Jay. And then I coached 4 years at Lance Cruz North. Um, and then I lived in Grosse Pointe, and my wife and I started having more kids and wanted to be closer to where at least end up, where I was living at. And the Grosse Pointe South girls job opened up, and I'm going on year 17 now. So,
Wow. Well, thank you for that. And Coach Young, do you want to give our viewers or our listeners just a little background on Coach Richard's role with BCAM and how he became associated with our clinic?
So Kevin's been on our board since 2012, at least, right?
yeah,
Kevin, it's been so
2012.
long, and has really been involved with getting us top-notch speakers since he got involved with BCAM. And Ed Dutcher was our longtime clinic director and was the person that brought in the speakers. And we haven't skipped a beat. And he's one of the best in the country. The speakers he would bring in that Kevin now is following that same mold where you bring in Robin Freilich before she's the Michigan State coach. I mean, back when she was at Ashland, and I would say people didn't know much about her. And she was one of the best speakers that weekend. And you look at this weekend, coming up to our next clinic, he's done the same thing. He does it all the time. So Kevin is a huge part of our board, obviously being on the girls' side, big help with June Scholastic recruiting. But as far as bringing in speakers, that's a hard job. And it's getting harder and harder. We used to have that October 15th start date for college basketball. Now that that's been moved up because you've got all the rules changed depending on your first game and all that stuff, it's been really difficult to get speakers. And he just works tirelessly throughout the whole year. So we just can't thank him enough. And we're going to have another awesome clinic.
Yeah. I mean, the
One of
BCAM
the
clinic
things,
rings with oh, go ahead.
good. I was just saying, talking and following up with Dan, I have a lot of people that have helped me, and a lot of the former speakers that we've had have been just tremendous friends of BCAM. Greg Campy, obviously we've been hosting it at Oakland, the past, 4 or 5 years, and Greg's phenomenal. And
Phenomenal. He's been a huge asset to our organization.
I just always appreciate, if I send him a text, he's responding right away. You know what I mean? And
Right.
as busy as these guys are, Greg takes his time. Phil Martelli, we had him here at St. Joe's, a number of times. He actually, the one year he got stranded on an airplane in a hurricane out east, and he promised us he would come the next year, and he was our first speaker.
Yep.
And he's given me people, given me phone numbers. John Beeline, spoke for us a number of
John Beeline's
years.
been a big help behind the scenes. Yep.
Giving me people. Nate Oates has been, similar to Greg. Like, I know, like, if I send Nate a text, he's going to respond right away, and giving me a lot of great ideas on who I should get. And then I had probably one of the best conversations with Jim Boylan, that spoke for us 2 years ago and was coaching with USA Basketball and coached with the Bulls. And he, all those guys are kind of a sounding board for me to look for new speakers and find some speakers that maybe some people haven't heard of.
That's great. Now, I was just going to add that the BCAM clinic, really rings with respect throughout the state, that people want to go. People know that top line speakers are going to be there. And Kevin, you're a big part of that. And so with that, if you don't mind just giving our listeners a preview, and,
Okay.
you might want to hit the what, where, why type questions, but just a short preview, because I know Coach Young wants to dive into a couple of the people and topics later too. So just a preview for our listeners.
Well, the probably the biggest name and the heaviest hitter that we've had in some time is, great friend of BCAM, Hall of Famer, not much else to say. He's unbelievable, is Tom Izzo. You know, he spoke for us in
That's
2019
right.
prior COVID, and we had our largest clinic numbers since 1996. So, you know,
Wow.
the Sparties will be out in full force, and you know, Coach Izzo, he moves the needle. You know, and you know, we're always very appreciative of, you know, his support. You know, of the coaches in the state. So, next up, right after Coach Izzo, I'm actually really excited. He came highly recommended from Greg Campy, and that says a lot if a rival in your league is recommending you. But Jared Calhoun from Youngstown State. Last season, Youngstown State had one of the most successful seasons they've had. They had 24-10, which was their Horizon League record. They won the regular season for the Horizon League, and that was the most wins in a season, and he earned Coach of the Year for the Horizon. So he was a student assistant at Cincinnati under Coach Huggins, and also was an assistant there at West Virginia. And I think, you know, very shortly, you know, I think you'll see him getting a Power 5 job. I think he'll be one of the next, you know, young coaches to get a big job. So you know, he's going to be talking about, you know, pressure defense. They you know, they run and jump. They get after you, and then he's going to talk about some half court offense as well. So
that's a huge get. That's a huge get.
And he's
another
been
one of those
awesome
guys
to work
that,
with. Yeah.
He's another one of those guys that is you know, we're getting him before he really becomes, you know, gets into a Power 5 school, and that's the key to this clinic is you can't have all Power 5 people every year. I mean, the budget won't allow it. So to talk a little bit more about, you know, your next guy, the European drills. How did you connect with this guy, and what's he going to bring to the table here?
So his name's Duško Savanovic.
Duško?
Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Duško, yep. So a friend of mine that works at Grosse Pointe Academy with me played, you know, D2 basketball, big basketball junkie. Well, you know, his brother-in-law is one of the Duško's partner, Alec, and he worked for the Indiana Pacers, and they went over there and they wanted to start basically a training company, but they're also looking to help, you know, Serbians come over to the United States, and also looking for Americans to go over to Serbia. So last year at Grosse Pointe Academy, they came over, and while they were visiting, we set up and we got them the gym, and they ran a camp. And you know, one of the biggest things that, you know, watching them run their camp was a lot of their drills where they talk about, you know, the American game is athleticism, and you know, a lot of their drills are, you know, dictated for, you know, people without as much athleticism. You know, my friend Dan, you know, was talking about how everybody on Serbia's world championship or their silver medal roster was Serbian. They didn't have anybody from any other country, you know, so they really prided themselves on that. But, you know, they were coming over, they wanted to look to do it again. And I said, you know what, how about we do, you know, European drills for the American high school coach.
That's great.
You know,
great.
Duško is funny. I was in Key West, and my boys were working out at a gym, and there was a pro that played in Europe. And I brought up this guy's name, and he's like, "Oh my God, Duško!" You know, Brandon Jenkins is one of my good friends, you know, that played at Louisville, and you know, Brandon's one of my best friends. Brandon came in, and all of a sudden, you know, met Duško, and they start talking, and they're like, "Oh, I think, you know, they played against each other." You know what I mean? So it was like,
wow,
they knew who Duško was,
great.
and You know,
See, that's
I'm
a
really
great get
excited.
for us. That's a great get
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
because
it's
how many
unique. You know what I mean?
how many of us have coached in high school where we're going to have to be good at a lot of other stuff than athleticism. I mean, we can try to get better quick wise, but we're always seems to be playing teams that are more athletic than we are. So this is right up. This is going to be a really good session. I'm really looking forward to
And
this
the
one.
nice thing is, I mean, they're running camps the whole next week at Grosse Pointe Academy. So, it might be an opportunity for coaches
For
that if
local
they see
guys to
what
go
they
stop
like,
in. Yeah.
they
Yeah.
even they come in and watch. I
Right.
mean, like I said, I watched them. First drill I did last year, a drill I called Serbian passing. And it was a simple drill, but I was like, oh, you know what I mean? Like some of the passing and how they were using both hands and different passes. And, so I think it'll be a good opportunity for, coaches in Michigan to, like I said, I can't imagine many other high school associations having people coming in from Serbia. And you know what? It's probably a good time to be Serbian, right? Like they got a
Right.
silver cup, silver,
Yeah.
medal, had a 2-time MVP, just won a national, probably the best player in the NBA. And that Djokovic guy's not bad either, right?
Right. So
Hey,
you
go
brought
ahead.
up a good point about, like, I think the intangibles of a clinic. And before Coach Young gets into some more of the guests that are coming, talk to us a little bit about why go to a clinic? What are some coaches that that attend clinics that, just are shining lights in the industry? Like, tell us a
Well,
little bit about the intangibles, who you might meet, all that kind of stuff.
I think Dan would agree. Like some people, like you don't get once you get coaching, you don't see them. I may send text messages and talk on the phone every once in a while, but seeing them up in person and maybe I'll grab a beer after with them, and seeing the same people every year. I think
Yeah.
one of the two people that stand out in my mind that we see, and we're going to see them, and they're going to be in the front row just like they are every year, are two of the winningest coaches that we have in the state with Roy Johnston and Ernie Rigetti. Those guys will still be there, Hall of
Aldemott
Famers.
will be there.
What's that?
Aldemott will be there.
Aldemott. Yes.
Aldemott will be there. I just
Yeah,
talked to
I
him
mean,
today.
like,
I mean,
there's so
they've
many
got
guys that you
the
can
most
bounce.
wins in the history of this. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Then that tell you
You could
something.
probably put those three together, and they have almost as many
Yeah.
wins as everybody else in the
Yeah.
in the arena.
No
But
question.
With the funny things about Roy, and this takes me back to coaching at Coleman. So we were playing in the Jack Pine, and I heard of Roy. We knew Roy. He's a legend. He was a legend then. That was over 20 years ago. 25 years ago, and so we're playing at Coleman. I'm coaching the JV game, and I look down, and my parents came up to watch, and my dad is talking to Roy. So during the game's going on, Roy calls me down to the end of the bench, and I'm 21, 22 years old. I better, if Roy says jump, I'm jumping. How high, right? And he's a legend. So I went down, and he's like, I coach your dad. I'm like,
Wow.
what?
How cool.
And so he coached, I think it was my dad's junior year. He coached Yale High School.
In
And
the
so,
thumb, up in the thumb
I
area.
started going to the clinics, and then I'd see Roy, and then Roy and Phil had the hospitality room.
Yeah.
I remember I was a young, college kid, just old enough to go in the hospitality room, and I can remember going with Phil's, Roy and Phil had me go with Phil's son to go get all the food and go get the keg of beer, and here, I thought it was the greatest thing. And like I said, Roy's still coming to the clinic, and like you said, lifelong learner. I don't think there's a better lifelong learner in the state of Michigan than Roy Johnston.
Well, I was just going to say that too. I mean, that fits our theme like a glove. I mean, one of the things that you look for common denominators of great coaches, and you just named great coaches, and one common denominator is they're at the clinic. And they're not
Yeah.
only at the clinic with a notepad and sitting in the front row, but they're also there to meet other coaches, to network. So if you're a young coach or even a veteran coach and you just want to meet different people, the BCAM clinic is a great place to do that and to improve your craft. Coach Young, I know you want to dive into some of the other coaches that Kevin was able to get at the clinic. Who else caught your eye?
Well, a lot of others. Talk a little bit about Doug Novak. What is he going to bring to the table?
Yeah, so I don't know, like it was earlier in the summer, I was talking to Jeff Tungate and he was, we were just talking. Him and I have had always had a good relationship and sharing what we're doing offensively. And he's like, we're running this, point attack, that Doug Novak. And I'm like, okay, well, tell me about a little bit about more about Doug. And I could, Doug has been a longtime coach. He most recently was an assistant at West Point on the men's side. And the funny thing is, I called Jeff Tungate the other day and asked him about, we were talking about Doug, and he's like, well, now I got to play him. He just took the assistant job at Western Kentucky. So he's like, yeah, I'm really glad he's coming to the clinic now, So, he's like, and we get to see him twice a year, maybe 3 times, So he was, he was joking around, but Doug was also head coach at Mississippi State on the women's side for a year.
Great.
He was a longtime coach at Bethel. And, when Jeff, told me about him, he's like, you have to go to his website. It's coachdugnovak.com. And I probably spent 3 hours on it as soon as I got it. It was rabbit hole after rabbit hole. And
it's phenomenal.
It's probably one of the best basketball resources.
This is going to be such a great resource. Exactly.
Exactly. It almost reminded me of Don Meyer's old website when it had.
Or if you needed something on anything,
yes,
right?
Anything, and
side out of bounds
really
versus zone
that.
pressure.
And then actually, when after we met in the summer, Dan, the whole way home, my wife wasn't thrilled, but he's got a couple great podcasts. He was on, I believe it was Slapping Glass basketball podcast, and Chris Oliver's Basketball Immersion. And he had 2, and they're unbelievable.
That's great. Years ago, we made a commitment to. We're going to bring in the best speakers every year, but we also want to honor the smaller schools in our state, and it's really been a fun new way of bringing in teams to run practices. Last year, I think we had 4. This year, we've cut it down to 3. And we're trying to bring in the Wayne States, the Saginaw Valleys, the Northwoods. I think last year we had Alma, right, that did a small session, the coach. Hope College, Grand Valley, Saginaw Valley, Ferris State. Tell us a little bit about that. That's really been fun to now that we've got June recruiting and we're running events in the summertime, it's been really fun to get to know more coaches in our state and honor them and get them in front of our people.
Well, I think, the past 5 years, I think you could probably put these guys, a couple of them up with the best speakers that we've had,
No question.
Coach Niz, last year,
Niz, right.
Now, is that Central Michigan, but
Macomb Community College last year, now Central Michigan assistant.
Yeah, he was.
And a high school coach about 3 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody walked away. It was like, wow.
Exactly.
Ryan Cottingham. Remember we had him from Spring Arbor, and it is Sunday morning, and wow,
he went crazy. And you see why I won a national championship. Yeah.
Andy
Brockema was amazing. Rick Wesley.
Yes.
Randy from Saginaw
Randy
Valley was
Baruch, yep.
really, really good. Randy Barrett, yep.
And it's nice to see, and what gave me that idea years ago was when I went down to Tennessee's basketball clinic, and they had Middle Tennessee State come in with their team. It was close for them, and it wasn't at another college, so they could do it at a high school. But it was the way it worked out. I'm sorry to bring this up, but Tom had a really good sense of humor about it. But Tom spoke right after Middle Tennessee State.
Ooh, that's tough.
And Tom came in and was like, "What is this? Some kind of sick joke?"
Yeah.
And so, but it was like, holy, you could see why. And when coaches are working with their team and their team knows their terminology, they can get a lot done in an hour. And and we've seen that ever since. So it's been great.
I want to give a plug to Clint Pleasant real quick. Clint,
great.
Yes.
Garth Pleasant and Clint Pleasant are they're such great people, and they've been a big part of our clinic really ever since it came down to Metro Detroit at Oakland University. They've had their players be demonstrators, and they do as good a job as anybody in the country. So we're really excited to have him Sunday morning this year. His team's always around, and Clint's really good.
They do such a great job, and I think every coach that Rochester has worked with, their coach is blown away with how hard they compete, and their fundamentals, their listening skills. I mean, they're on top of it, and like I said,
there's no more respected name in the state of Michigan in the basketball community than the Pleasant family, for sure. Have them part of it. So, Coach, yes. I know that you, Coach Young, I know that the sponsors play a big part of it. The BCAM is one of the biggest if not the biggest coaching organization in the country. And it only happens because not only we have great coaches in our association, but we have sponsors that allow us to do the things like these clinics. Who might some of the participants at our clinic see as far as our sponsors are concerned?
So Rawlings has been our longtime clinic sponsor. They are the basketball of the state of Michigan. They have been just a wonderful partner for years and years, and hopefully they will continue to. They help keep them, and when it comes to the clinic, helping us, we can keep the clinic at $95 before September 26th. After September 26th, it becomes $125, or if you walk up, it's $125. But along with them, Huddle, which is going to be giving away another 12K gun, and to someone at the clinic.
Third year in a row.
They're an amazing partner. So Shoot Away is going to be present, and they're going to give away the gun. That's great. Huddle is going to be giving away a silver account with a 12-hour assist where you get it back within 12 hours. They're going to give away one of those to a coach. But along with them, United Dairy Industry of Michigan, Game 1, which is the former Team Sports. Baron Rings is a longtime partner with our Hall of Fame, as well as Huddle, helps us with our Hall of Fame and our 4 Hall of Famers. Coaches Insider will film it, and we're going to have some opportunities to do, and this is new and it's kind of hot off the press, but we're going to try to have some things for coaches after the clinic, if you attend, some opportunities to have these on film. But more to that coming as we get closer to the clinic. And then Bology, they're all strong partners, and it's the reason why if you get a school special, it's about less than $5 per member. And you say, well, why would you make it that cheap? Well, we're going on year 14 as the most members in any organization in the country at any level, and we take great pride in that. Amy Heidenberg and our board of directors and our regional directors have a lot to do with that. But we take great pride in that we include middle school, we include college, junior college, at any level, middle school, JV coaches, freshman coaches. And, it speaks to Mike Massucci in starting the Aspiring Head Coach program. Coaches now feel, started with 33 the first year, we have 55 the second year. Mike Massucci and Billy Schellenbarger have been huge in starting that program, which is going to lead the next generation, which is our big push now, is to support the young coaches when they have that rough year. We're going to mentor you all the way through. And so I'm rambling on, but I'm just love to be a part of our organization and all the things we're trying to do. And we're going to, in this podcast, we're going to try to spread that message more and more.
That's great. So, Kevin, we're going to
I want to go back to.
Go ahead.
If I got a couple people that I'd like to talk about before.
Sure, please do.
But I just about Clint. I was recently on a visit to Rochester, and I was blown away by their new gym over there. That they, rightfully so, that they named after Garth. But there's some things that how long Rochester we've been using them as a demo, 15 years or more,
Yeah.
Right. And so,
they've been involved even before we came to Metro Detroit.
Yeah. I thought I knew Clint, and I did not know that his grandfather started Rochester University.
Wow. I didn't know that either.
Yeah. So I'm sitting there, and he's telling me, I knew he coached at Tennessee Martin and Abilene Chris. I didn't know he worked for Coach Stan Heath, and so it was, I was there on a visit, and I learned a lot about Clint. So that was fun.
Tell us a little bit more about Sunday. What a great end of the clinic. Wow.
I think it's their best Sunday lineup that we've had. Obviously,
no question.
Clint's going to start off and get us started, and we're going to roll right into Wes Miller from Cincinnati. I'm sure everybody remembers him from
David DeJulius played
North
for him
Carolina,
over the years.
for Roy Williams. And then he had 10 phenomenal years at UNC Greensboro, where he turned that program around.
Right.
He spoke a couple years ago at Horatio's event in April, and I remember Dan and you and I talking. We're like, we got to get this guy.
We got to get him for sure. He's
great.
A great get, Kev. Great get.
Yep. And then following up with Wes is Greg Gard. I think we've been trying 3-4 years. Greg's been trying to help us. This year, Jonathan Blackwell's dad, Glenn, who's always there with the fellowship Christian, he helped. I was coaching Glenn's youngest son, and we're talking. He's like, "Oh, you want Gard's number? I'll give it to you right now." And I'm really excited. You want to talk about discipline, fundamental basketball. Nobody does it better than Wisconsin. The amount of pride that they take, in taking care of the basketball. And, when he asked what we wanted him to speak on, it was no brainer,
So and years ago, I worked five-star with Tobin Anderson. And they made that run last year, and I'm like, that's the same Tobin Anderson we worked five-star with years ago, back in the early, probably mid-'90s.
So it's funny you bring that up.
He's exactly how he was then. He's a junkie. That guy loves ball.
So you're bringing that up. I'm talking to one of my parents, my students' parents, who actually worked for Jay Smith, and now he's been a longtime executive in the NBA. Paul Rivers, he's working for Phoenix Suns now, and but he was working with Jay back when I was at Central, working Jay Smith's basketball camps, and Paul's daughter is a student at Grosse Pointe Academy, and Tobin. He's like, I was just talking to Tobin yesterday, so I sent Tobin a text that I was with Paul. He's like, get out of here. We go way back to 5-star camp, and what do you say? The guy did the impossible, right?
Yeah.
and you can see why he did it. And, and he was smart enough too to recruit, our Mr. Basketball last year when, a
Right.
lot of other schools were not. And, he had foresight to recruit Tyler Jamison. And, unfortunately, Tyler's, Fairleigh Dickinson, but he took the job at Iona, and you understand that. And,
Right.
but yeah, that lineup
People
on
are going to
Sunday,
love. People are going to love Tobin. People are going to love
That's
Tobin.
right.
He is a basketball junkie, and the only thing is we'll have to get to the banquet, and he'll probably still be going. I mean, he's one of those
Yes.
guys that'll stay and
Yes.
stay
So,
and answer more questions, and let's keep going. And he's great.
so,
What a
so
good
that's
get. When you
Sunday.
got him, I was so fired up.
Yeah, yeah. So that's Sunday, but one change that from the original schedule on Saturday is our final speaker on Saturday is Robin Freilich, as
She's
Wow.
the best.
Dan
She's the
mentioned
best.
before. We like to say we had her first. When she was at
I mean,
Ashland, when she
Yeah.
was at Ashland, and it's funny how things go. One of my best friends, my daughter's godfather, Joel Weimer, who's now an assistant for Robin, was at Wayne State for Carrie Lohr, who's our, on our board.
Who's a
and
board member
who's-
speaking. She's
and
great.
Carrie's
great.
Carrie, promotes, women athletics more than anybody. She's
More than
phenomenal.
anyone.
Yes,
More than
and,
anyone.
And so that's we're
So excited to have her.
But Joel was working for Carrie, and they were playing Ashland, and Joel told me, he's like, you got to. These girls play hard. They run and jump. They're, he's like, they high low you. He's like, you got to play, and what was her, would she have 104, 101 wins and 4 losses at Ashland.
And that that weekend, we always every year we go around and we do a straw poll in the crowd. Who'd you like? Who'd you like? Who'd you like? Who'd you like? Who did you get anything from it? To a person, man, that girl from Ashland, Robin Freilich, she's unbelievable. I mean, she was the talk of the weekend.
Well, and
that's what I mean. Going into the clinic, you'd think, who's Robin Freilich?
This
And
sounds
it's
like a can't miss weekend.
Yeah.
Well, like with
So,
Robin
Kevin,
too, like
go ahead.
I've been able to, with having Joel, going to Bowling Green with her, and now Michigan State, our family has watched them, from where she was when she first took over. And,
Right.
I don't know if there's anybody in the country better to speak on culture than Robin. It's just not coaches talk with her. It's their core values are their core values, and they're simple, like I said, manners matter. It's something simple like that, but
Love it.
but they do it. And
They live it.
You can and you can see why the success that they have.
We had her going right after Izzo, but it worked out better to have her at the end of the day with a commitment she had during the day. So it's really going to be really nice to have Coach Izzo start the day and Robin end the day, because, two heavy hitters and
For sure.
It doesn't
Spartan
get
sandwich.
any better.
Spartan
It doesn't
sandwich.
get any better.
So, Kevin, you're our very first guest. How about that? And you proved
I told
you did
you,
a great.
this may go up tombstone,
Hey, Rich.
right on the gravestone.
You did a great job
How many-
previewing.
How
Go
many
ahead.
people did you ask before me? Is what I want to know, Mike.
Well,
How many
we went-
people
we-
did you ask
you're the
before
first.
me?
As soon as we said we're going for a lifelong learner, we're going to dive into the clinic. This was a
I
no-brainer.
said we got to get
You're
We're
not
gonna
Kevin.
saying
start
I'm
a
old,
tradition,
are you?
though.
Is that an old joke?
This would be an annual mid-September podcast
Yeah.
talking about the clinic.
We're going to start a tradition with our guests that our last question will be this. If there's a coach out there who wants to have a long, distinguished career, what advice would you give that coach?
Well, I'm going to give you advice that someone gave me, and he was 100% right. Tony Monti, he was a long time coach at St. Clair High School, rival of Marysville back in the day. But, Tony was respected and in that area and the state. But he said, if you're in it long enough, you're going to see everything, I've had, as a coach, unfortunately, we lost back-to-back Class A championship, lost by one, lost in overtime to Grand Haven in 2012 and 2013. But, we saw the very best, the very high. And,
Yep.
I've also had seasons where we won 2 games. I don't know if there's, athletics, I think you can say, and coaching is very humbling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would say if you're in it long enough, you're going to see everything. But I think the most important thing, and I think young coaches, and I made the mistake, it was all about winning. And I, even those years when we were, winning a lot of games, and looking back at them, they probably weren't as fun as they should have been.
Yes.
And
That's a great point.
The relationships, I think, with your players is the most important thing. I don't think anybody wants to be the coach that nobody comes back and visits.
Right.
Probably the greatest accomplishment that, probably one of the best feelings as a coach that I've ever had was 2 years ago. She's my assistant now, but she was an all-state guard for me in 2012 and went on to play at University of Chicago, Caitlin Moore, now Caitlin Reck. But, I went to her wedding. My youngest daughter was a flower girl in her wedding. And I got a picture with me and 9 of my former players from various years.
How about that?
And like, that's probably the best. Honestly, that's a win, right? That's probably the best victory of my life right there, is to be able to have that memory, to be able to have that picture. Very fortunate. So I'd say, you're going to see everything. Nothing is as bad as it seems, and sometimes it's not as good as it seems too.
There you go.
And, but relationships with your players needs to be number one.
I like
Amen.
it. That's
well done,
a great
Kevin.
way to end.
Well done. Awesome
Well
job.
done.
Thanks for
Well
having
said.
me, guys.
Hey,
You
so we will see you at the clinic. I can't wait.
Can't wait.
And we'll give all the specifics towards the end of our podcast. But thank you so much, Coach, and we wish you the best as you're preparing for your season.
Like I said, I listen to Chris Oliver's. I listen to Slapping Glass. This is a great. I'm glad BCAM is doing this, and I can't wait to listen to others. So appreciate you guys.
Thank you, Coach.
Thanks, Kevin.
All right.
Appreciate you, brother.
Yep. Thanks.
Wow, Coach Young, that was great. This is like one of those I look forward to moments. Like you put September 30th on your calendar, and you're like, this is a time to get better. We'll share the specifics of the clinic. We're going to transition now to our next segment, which is the BCAM highlight segment. In this segment, we reinforce our theme of the month. And our theme of the month right now is being a lifelong learner. And you heard the value of being a lifelong learner through Coach Richard's stories, especially with Coach Roy Johnston. How about that? One of the winningest coaches in boys basketball in the state of Michigan is an annual attendee at the clinic. I also want to encourage coaches to think about what are common denominators of successful coaches. Like, what do the successful coaches do differently than the others? And to stay away from that KIA, that know-it-all mentality, and to always have that curiosity about you. I remember reading a book by a motivator named Jim Rohn, who said, you'll be the average of the 5 closest people in your life. Just think if you could pack 5 great coaches in your life. How would that increase your competency as a coach, increase your motivation, increase the way you go about relating to your players? I remember when I was a young coach, Tim McCormick encouraged me to have a circle of greatness around me, to put people in your life that are going to improve what you do. So I intentionally reached out to 3 coaches that year, all BCAM members. Coach Don Seco, who was a former coach at Shrine High School, former college coach at UAD, former assistant coach at Michigan. I reached out to Greg Essler, the former head coach at Warren De La Salle, and then reached out to the former coach at North Farmington, Tom Negoshian. I asked them all, hey, do you mind if I come over to your school and spend a little bit of time with you? I've got some questions. I asked Coach Seco all about defense, Coach Essler all about his mission and philosophy, and Coach Negoshian all about his pressure defense. And I really try to expand my network. I had great mentors like Coach Kurt Keener, Frank Orlando, or Coach Chris Drogosh from Bloomfield. But I think I encourage coaches to be intentional about that circle of greatness around you. In fact, ironically, Coach Negoshian just the other day told me a story similar to the Roy Johnston story, because I talked to him about the value of being a lifelong learner. And he said, Mike, I got to tell you this story. John Harrington, the greatest football coach in Michigan history, started as wanting to be a basketball coach. He played basketball at Central Michigan, couldn't find a basketball job, so his first coaching job was a JV football coach at North Farmington. And the football coach at that time was a legend named Ron Holland. And he said, Coach Harrington, if you want to be a great coach, you come to my varsity practices every day. But I also want you to go to a clinic every year. And he said this, I want you to sit in the front row with a notebook, and I want you to take notes, and then come back and teach our staff what you learned. And Coach Harrington took that advice of going to an annual clinic, sitting in the front row. In fact, Coach Negoshian said he not only sat in the front row, he sat at the right side of the front row every day, every clinic, took notes every year. He becomes the greatest football coach in the history of Michigan. So it's like those stories that reinforce the value of being a lifelong learner. Coach, I know that you wanted to end with something to look forward to. And this is a layup question now because we've got that clinic. But I know you want to talk about a few other things in our last segment of something to look forward to.
Well, it's starting to get cold. It's starting to get to where we're going to get in the gym more and more. And the clinic is just a really good time to maybe bring your staff, have a chance to, we see every year coaches in the hotel or coaches in the lobby, outside the clinic, at restaurants, meeting as a staff. And it's that time to, to build and to think about your team and to think about how the summer went and how, who you lost off last year's team, who's coming in off the JV or the freshman, who's coming into your school that's new as maybe an incoming ninth grader. And to put together your plan. And that's always that's what it's all about. Is to get with coaches, to meet new coaches, and to build your plan. The clinic is going to be, we're going to try to make it as good as we can make it. We're going to get great speakers. We're going to have great dialogue. We're going to have a coaches party on Saturday night. We're also going to continue this podcast. We're going to have the podcast going on during the clinic. So after Izzo speaks or before Robin Freilich speaks or before Carrie Lohr gets up from Wayne State, or any of the coaches, we're going to try to get them with Mike Massucci and Matt Windle and maybe myself if I can get up there. And we're gonna build a little bit of a library. And Mike, you're the best at getting those to talk about, what's important in our sport. That's what I'm looking forward to, is seeing everybody the start of the season. I'll end on this. It was so cool to see Becky Hammond go into the Hall of Fame with Greg Popovich, and Greg Popovich would text Becky in her first year and even up to now, just be yourself. You'll be great. and she said he texts her all the time and stays in touch and reinforces, because coaching can be, Mike, you've said it. It might be the hardest thing that we're doing now, but it's one of the most important things to the kids. The parents are always going to be, some years will be better than others, but just remember the kids, the impact you make with your players. And like Kevin said, the weddings and the get-togethers later in life, that's what this business is all about, is the people. So just really proud to be a part of BCAM, one of the best organizations there is. And this podcast is
Coach,
really going to be
if
fun.
If you're a listener, how do you sign up for the clinic?
So you can go online to bcam.org, click on the clinic, and you go right from there.
Okay.
September 26th is the deadline for the $95 rate. So you want to get on that. If it's after September 26th at midnight, then the rate goes to $125. If you walk up at the door, which is fine, it'll be $125. Membership, same thing. Go online, fill it out, get it done as soon as you can, because that will affect the pricing as well, whether you're a member. But you can still sign up for the clinic, even though the membership hasn't been totally approved yet. But I didn't mention Gatorade as one of our sponsors too. So our clinic is sponsored by Rawlings, but obviously other sponsors and vendors will be there. Lots of good stuff to look forward to. United Dairy Industry of Michigan is going to be doing a lot of good educational stuff, which is, the kind of stuff that helps your team. I remember when I first started coaching at John Glenn, we would always tail off in the second half. And so I started asking the guys, and they weren't eating. They'd eat lunch at 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning, and at 8 o'clock at night, they were just eating potato chips and, junk food. So that kind of stuff's important too. And United Dairy Michigan does a great job with that.
Yeah. And, you always have to embed something to look forward to in your life and your seasons. And so that clinic is something that's kind of a can't wait moment for us. But we're also looking forward to the next month where our theme is going to be preparation. And we have none other than the great Keith Guy from Muskegon High School as our guest.
Yeah.
And I can't wait for that as well. We want this podcast to be interactive. Send us comments. Give us, if you would, a 5-star rating. Email us suggestions on guests or topics or themes. If you have a story, like a Tom Negocian story or John Harrington story like was told today, please share those, because we want to highlight BCAM coaches. We can't thank you enough for listening. And until next month, well, I guess we'll see you at the clinic. If you see some BCAM shirts on, come up, give us a great handshake and say hello. And can't wait to meet you guys. Coach Young, you need great teammates in life, and I think this is going to be a great venture together. So thank you for doing this. And on behalf of BCAM, we want to thank all our viewers. Take care.
My name is Dan Young. I am the Executive Director of BCAM, the Basketball Coaches Association of Michigan. We are the largest coaches association in the United States. We believe that better coaching always matters. It's a really difficult time to be a coach, but at the same time, it has never been more important time to coach. We couldn't serve our coaches without the support of our sponsors: Rawlings, Huddle, Shoot Away, United Dairy Industry of Michigan, Ballogy, Game One, Barron Rings, Coaches Insider, Gatorade, and the Detroit Pistons. We encourage our members and listeners to support those who support us.